Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to the review for the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. I'm very excited because this is probably the best The Mandalorian has ever been, but also very sad because this is the last episode we have for over a year and it's just tearing me apart. But with that being said, we'll be going into this fully with spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, well, you're probably spoiled already just being on YouTube and social media, but if you somehow haven't been spoiled, go watch it, then come back. You'll be happy you did. With that being said, this episode is basically everything that I hoped The Mandalorian could be, and it's one of the best Star Wars things, period. I've said since episode 2 of The Mandalorian that this show is really my favorite thing since Return of the Jedi, and this episode really just solidified that and somehow took the show to an entire new level. So I'll talk about the entire episode sort of chronologically. I've given you guys now my basic review of things. If you're only interested in hearing about that part, the Luke reveal, then you can go to the very end. I'll try to remember to put a timestamp on the screen, but no promises. So let's start at the very beginning. And the direction in this episode was great, just as I anticipated it being. Although it all took place on a single ship, it never felt too crowded or boring, sort of like I think some episodes have in the past, in particular the Prison Break episode. But I mean, even from the very beginning, there's a nice little detail where the ion cannons actually look like ion cannons, and that's something I don't take for granted in modern Star Wars. The universe in The Mandalorian just works like you would expect it to as a hardcore Star Wars fan, and that's something that I will always appreciate. Speaking of appreciate, I continue to like the character of Dr. Pershing. We've seen a few times that he's not just a straight up evil character, even though he does occupy that sort of Nazi scientist role. He at the very least cares somewhat about the child. He's willing later on in this episode to help Din Djarin, and I like that. I think it's interesting. I do wish we had gone to Kamino or somewhere this episode that may have been a little more compelling than just the inside of a cruiser, but whatever. It's a little disappointing that all my astro-navigational work ended up turning up nothing, but that's just the way it is. Anyway, we go to this planet to pick up the rest of our crew for this big heist, and of course we see a Mandalorian fighter, a gauntlet, and I was wondering what this planet was. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be Lothal or Concord Dawn or what, but I really enjoyed the aesthetics of it, and of course I am a sucker for a cantina scene. I gotta say, I've really liked Sasha Banks' character this season. I think she's been an awesome addition to the show, and her showdown with Boba was great, as was kind of Boba's general contention with the rest of the Mandalorians. I do like that he can hang with them though, even though he doesn't have the same training as Bo-Katan or the others. He's deadly in his own right. But I also do like that Bo-Katan is not necessarily the most friendly person in the galaxy. Like, she's got an edge to her. She's definitely all about herself and Mandalorians. She's sticking her neck out for Din here only because she believes that he can bring her to something that she wants. Anyway, getting back to space, I thought the crash landing of the Lambda inside the Architans was also really well done. The action for this episode generally was super on point. I thought Slave 1 is showing even more of its potential here. I'm glad it didn't just use the seismic charge on the ties there. I think that would have been a little bit too much. But earlier this season, I was talking about how the ship is much deadlier than the Razor's Crest, and I'm glad we got to see those swiveling laser cannons that we saw in the prequels and which obviously seemed to be pretty damn deadly. I do think it was smart to split the Mando and the rest of his companions up. I do wish Boba Fett could have been involved, and I felt the same last episode, but I think he's got his own kind of story to tell. It makes sense that he's not getting overly involved, and I do think it's really cool that there are so many really strong female characters in this season. Like, the group that the Mando splits off from is all women, which is not something you ordinarily see in Star Wars. But someone also pointed out on Twitter that many of the women in The Mandalorian are over 40, which is very rare in the movie/television industry, so that's cool. I thought the Dark Troopers were a nicely ominous presence throughout the episode. Like, their threat was clearly explained before the mission, and Din on his own, besides looking for the child, is also trying to stop them from activating, because that means certain death. The one scene where he does run into a single Dark Trooper is absolutely horrific. The thing is terrifying, and even worse, in my opinion, was seeing the other Dark Troopers behind the door just relentlessly and single-mindedly smashing at it, trying to get out. Like, these things are complete machines. They're unstoppable. And I also thought it was interesting that earlier on in the episode, we get the reveal that these are Phase 3 Dark Troopers, or the third generation at least. Also, later on in the episode, we see them get cut apart, so it seems unlikely that they're built with Beskar, which throws some of my theories a little out the window, but we can do a whole nother video about that in the future. I think it also opens up new possibilities with the Dark Trooper scene, or the quasi-Dark Trooper scene with Thrawn, and in the Bad Batch teaser, but we'll talk about that on another day. But yeah, the Dark Trooper fight definitely had some Oberyn Martell moments. I'm glad the Mandalorian was wearing his helmet. He must have had a very, very major headache. And I'm glad they didn't just end the Dark Trooper threat by flushing them out the airlock, but Mando did a good job as well of establishing how dangerous they are, especially as a group, I imagine. The Grogu scene was also very interesting. I mean, I missed him a lot after a couple of episodes, one episode entirely without him, and it was so sad seeing him in those little binders. Moff Gideon continues to be a very interesting character because he's got the intelligence and the cunning of some other Imperial enemies we've seen in the past. I mean, he's not Thrawn level, but he does have that sort of omniscient, all-seeing eye. However, unlike Thrawn, he's a bit of a weasel. Like, he's not unwilling to cheat. He'll use whatever advantage he can against his enemies. I quite liked that. It also reveals that the Mandalorian was quite right in not trusting him at the end of season 1 when Gideon offered to let him go for the child. We get the same thing here. The Mandalorian foolishly believes that he will be spared if he takes the child and leave, and we get an amazing sword fight with the Darksaber versus Beskar's spear. I guess not really a sword fight, but a fight. I thought the choreography here was especially great. The stakes felt high. Gideon's first assault on the Mandalorian was brutal and vicious, and the Mandalorian's eventually disarming of Moff Gideon was also really well done. He's got like this kick move where he flips the spear back. I thought it was done well. I felt the tension, and I also felt the tension when he picked up the Darksaber, because as we learn in a minute, Bo-Katan is on some shit. Like, she's decided now is the time to abide by all the Mandalorian rules, and she can only take the Darksaber through combat. Hopefully this has worked out. I can actually see Bo-Katan being somewhat of an antagonist to the Mandalorian, because I really don't think Din Djarin's purpose here is to lead the Mandalorians and to reclaim the throne on Mandalore or anything like that. Although he has shown some leadership abilities, especially compassion towards people. We saw some of that last episode, so I guess it's possible, but I don't think that's the way the series is heading. But I'm going to come back and talk about that at the end of this review when I talk about the Book of Boba Fett stuff. Again, it was nice to see Gideon trying to use his worminess to turn the squad against each other, and then the Dark Troopers come, the threat is palpable, and of course, the moment. So I had figured if any Jedi was going to come, it would be Luke. I knew Ezra was a possibility, but I figured he was probably still lost. I don't think Ezra would be sort of returned through this show. I think that's Ahsoka's place and the Rebel sequel series place to find Ezra. I figured it wasn't Cal Kestis, and all episode I had been waiting for that single X-Wing to show up, and when it happened, I mean, wow, that was a very, very emotional moment, not just for me, but I mean, Star Wars fans as a whole. We've been waiting for a moment like this. I'm not embarrassed to say that. I did get a little teary-eyed when I saw that X-Wing. I knew immediately, although I gotta say, as it was pulling into the hangar, I was looking for red markings. I was like, is that Luke's for sure? And of course it was. I wasn't really surprised that they would do it because I thought it might happen. When I went to bed last night, I figured that the episode might have Luke in it, but still actually seeing it happen is just shocking. And that's a lot of what The Mandalorian has brought to the table, and one thing that I've really enjoyed. I was worried about The Mandalorian going a bit too far with cameos and expanding the scope of the show, and maybe they did do that a little bit this season. I think I need some time to think about it, but I still end up loving pretty much every episode. The Luke stuff was, well, amazing. He's the Luke Skywalker that a lot of us have wanted to see for a while now. He's improved since his return to the Jedi phase. He's certainly a master now, and he's just moving through the Dark Troopers like they're butter. When we saw Din Djarin basically just scrape out a single win against one using every tool in his arsenal, Luke just, you know, he has his own Darth Vader hallway scene, and it's amazing. The character of Luke himself, of course, drew a bit of controversy because they did use that de-aging technology. It appears that it was Mark Hamill as Luke, then de-aged somewhat. I'm not exactly sure. I think the better option would have been bringing in Sebastian Stan. That's what I thought happened at the first when I saw him. But some people have also pointed out this may have been an effort to try not to spoil the moment through casting rumors or whatever else. And if that's the case, I'm happy they took this route because the surprise was totally worth it. Either way, I know it didn't work for some people, but it worked for me. I thought it was great. Totally worth it to see Luke back in the flesh. It's a show, and I'd always rather that fun storytelling come ahead of pretty much everything else. So in this case especially, great job. The end of the episode, of course, is incredibly emotional, with Din showing real character development, taking off his helmet, saying goodbye to Grogu or the child for what may be the last time. I'm sure not, though. He says, I'll see you soon, and I do believe it. I mean, what can you say? You're leaving this kid who you fought for, who you really want nothing more than to be with, obviously, to go off and train as a Jedi, something you don't really understand, but it's your mission. I do think R2-D2 coming was such a nice touch, and it seemed like like it helped Grogu sort of warm up to the thing as well. And I mean, R2's awesome. That would make me feel more comfortable going with Luke as well. But I mean, that ending is just kind of a bit of a knife in the chest, isn't it? Which leaves me to believe at the end of this excellent episode, where do we go now? After the credits, we see a teaser for a new show, an existing show, who knows, called The Book of Boba Fett. It shows Boba Fett going and taking the throne on Jabba's palace from a very, very thick Bib Fortuna. I thought that was awesome. I'm really excited for a Boba Fett show to be set on Tatooine. I've talked about before that I love Tatooine as a planet. I love the seedy underbelly. This could be a really good opportunity to see Cobb Vanth again, but I'm also wondering, is this a replacement for The Mandalorian Season 3? We know Mando Season 3 is supposed to come out on December 25th, Christmas 2021, and this show, The Book of Boba Fett, in a show which has been based on chapters, is coming out December next year as well. So does that mean this is Mando Season 3, or is this something completely different? I suspect we'll know in the next few days, but I don't know. Well, I really like Boba Fett, and I think it could be a sort of smaller storyline, which I would enjoy. I'd prefer this to be a mini-series leading up to the events of Mando Season 3, which I do think is possible, or perhaps even likely, but we won't know for some time. I'm not going to lie, when I saw the Book of Boba Fett stuff come up, I thought that this show would be coming out immediately after The Mandalorian to help stop those Disney Plus subscribers from leaving the service immediately after the finale, but no, we got the Book of Boba Fett coming sometime next year, maybe as Mando Season 3, maybe as its own thing. Hopefully the latter for me, because I love Din Djarin and I'm really curious to see where his story goes, especially now that this first mission has been accomplished. But guys, that's all for me. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was great that we brought Bo-Katan back. I feel like we haven't talked much about her. Sasha Banks was also great. I really liked when she told Boba Fett that he'd be talking through a Bacta window or whatever she said. It was a really nice in-universe threat. But yeah, looking forward to reading your comments. Until next time, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.